So I've been thinking about something lately, and I've had several conversations around this with women and actually with my assistant too. And frankly, I think this is one of those topics that a lot of women kind of notice in your own life, but nobody really explains this or makes the connection, or at least doesn't make the connection in a way that makes sense. So, and I've started noticing, like I said, these patterns in conversations. It's one of the things I enjoy about talking to lots and lots of different people and lots of different kinds of people with different experiences from different backgrounds who live in different parts of the world. And it is that I get to have really cool discussions with some super interesting people, right? So here's kind of the pattern that I've noticed. A woman goes through some kind of a major life event. It could be loss, like a divorce, or through even death. It can be caretaking for maybe an elderly parent or an ill sibling, or children who maybe for some reason need not have special needs or something like that. It could be they go through an event like a traumatic type of relationship, serious illness and health kinds of issues, surgery, stroke, major infection, those kinds of things. It can be a major event in the sense that they are burned out from years and years of chronic stress, from work-related stress, personal stress, financial stress. A season of life maybe that was just super emotional or became emotional or became physically overwhelming because of circumstances. And somewhere after any of those kinds of events, and so many more that I'm not even recalling, but that are possibilities, somewhere after that, their body changes. It can be that their energy changes, their weight fluctuates, they feel more inflamed and bloated. Maybe they've become aware of blood sugar changes or the symptoms that indicate blood sugar changes. Their sleep starts to shift, become worse most often. They've had maybe different levels of appetite. And women I talk to describe these events and these changes in almost the same way. They'll say something like, everything changed after X, Y, or Z, right? And they'll tell me that it's not gradually. It's like everything changed after blah happened. Almost like there was this before version of their body and this after version of their body, right? And recently, my assistant shared with me that her mom, who'd had a major health event that I knew of, and that event had kind of spiraled into several different complications, and eventually, what she ended up getting a diagnosis of being borderline, or I don't recall exactly, but it was either borderline or she told me that her mom was diagnosed with basically prediabetes or diabetes. And then another woman that I was talking to mentioned a really similar thing. And by the way, shout out to my assistant because she's the one who actually gave me the idea when we were talking about this to do this podcast episode about it. So shout out to Charisse. um, then another woman that I spoke to said that after her stroke, diabetes entered the picture for her. And I have found myself thinking, these women they're not crazy for noticing these patterns, right? Now, before I go any further, I want to say very, very clearly this next thing, because I think conversations like this can super quickly become irresponsible, especially in the online space. And I won't go in on that tangent. I could do a whole series of episodes on that. But I want to say very quickly, because I don't want this to be an irresponsible conversation. So I want to very clearly and explicitly say, I am not saying that trauma directly causes diabetes. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying you're stressed and magically out of nowhere a disease is created in your body. That's not what I'm saying. But I do think there's a conversation worth having about what happens when a body spends years compensating. I'll put it that way. And then it hits its threshold. Because one thing I think we modern women have normalized is surviving in conditions that the human body was never meant to sustain long term. Never meant to sustain long term. We've become expert at surviving, in fact, through those different kinds of conditions. And I don't even mean when I say that, I don't even mean like dramatic, traumatic events only. I mean constant pressure, poor sleep, hypervigilance, caretaking for extended periods of times, suppressing our emotions, being the strong one and stuffing down how we feel all the time for everyone else. Stress eating, overeating, undereating, over caffeinating, running on constant cortisol, and even just the responsibility of it all, right? For years, you're living in a position too, oftentimes, where your body is disconnected from its signals. I did a whole series of episodes on that just in the last few weeks, that that loss of the connection to the communication system in your body. And what's interesting is that the body is incredibly adaptive until it isn't. And a lot of women think that if stress is really affecting me, this is how I see a lot of women think about this. You think if stress was really affecting me, then I'd completely fall apart. But that's not how it works. A lot of really high functioning women become even more productive under stress. I remember being in grad school and saying, I do my best work when I procrastinate and I'm under the pressure of time. Now, little did I know the damage at that time when I was in grad school that I was doing to my metabolism. But that is, I think, a very common way for us to think. We think that we can do a whole lot more and do a great job when we're under this constant pressure and constant stress. We're more capable, we think we're more efficient, more emotionally managed or contained. Meanwhile, your body is quietly sort of in the background having to compensate for everything that you're actually dealing with and exposing it to and allowing to go on. And sometimes, as women, we don't realize how much strain on our system is there, or how much strain our system is under until some major event pushes you beyond what your body can stand and can keep compensating for, right? And that's when women will say things like, I suddenly gained weight. My blood sugar changed overnight. My body never recovered after that. My energy was never the same after that. Everything became so much harder after that X in my life. And I think women blame themselves a lot of times for what may actually be years and years and years of accumulated physiological stress that finally bubbles to the top and surfaces in a physical way. I think about periods of my own life, right? Not just in grad school, like where I looked completely functional. The years and in one particular system where I worked, years of working and building and thinking and giving and showing up and performing and handling responsibilities, mine and those of others. Yet behind the scenes, there were good chunks of time, extended seasons, I will say, where my nervous system was carrying so much more than I even consciously realized at the time. And it was doing lots and lots and lots of damage. And I think a lot of you listening to this will understand that feeling. You don't even recognize stress anymore as stress because it's become so normal. It's become just your normal operating system. And because of that, you have adapted to pressure that feels so normal to you that when things are calm, that feels unfamiliar. How many times have you thought or said, like, I just can't get my mind to stop racing, or I can't get, I'm squirrel moment here. This is how it is to live in my ADHD brain. I'm thinking as I'm talking to you and recording this, I am thinking about an analogy that I use all the time when I share this with women. Women will tell me they're, oh, I don't have stress. And I will say, here's the thing. It's like having a toothache. When you have a toothache and you start to feel pain in your mouth, what do we often do? We're too busy to go to the dentist, so we pop a couple of ibuprofen or Advil or whatever, right? Your over-the-counter drug of choice. And we sort of mask that pain. And we kind of secretly hope it just goes away. That's not a big deal. There's nothing, brewing underneath there. And pain comes back. We take more of whatever that over-the-counter pain relief is. And we do that maybe for a few days because we're busy at work, there are deadlines, whatever is going on, and we don't have time to call the dentist or, let alone go to the dentist and try to get in on the dentist's schedule, right? And pretty soon, we don't feel that pain in our tooth anymore. And a couple of things are going on. You're masking it with the ibuprofen or the over-the-counter pain relief, right? You also have built a little bit more tolerance up because you've been dealing with it for an extended period of time now. And so you don't feel the pain. But if there's infection there, that infection is still quietly doing damage, even though you don't feel the pain. Well, I liken that example to the stress and the stress damage that's going on when we say, oh, I don't have stress, or I'm not under stress, or I deal with stress really well. That's another one I hear all the time. I deal with stress really, really well. Well, maybe you do, but maybe the way that you deal with it really well, and I'm using air quotes here, maybe the way that you deal with it really well is that you're not dealing with it and it's still doing the undercurrent of damage to your metabolism and your nervous system and all the other things that touches, right? And so that goes on for so long that you don't think you're under stress. And then one day your body starts to speak up louder than your mind can rationalize away. And that might look like complete exhaustion. It might be fatigue. Maybe it's that I can't quiet my brain down to sleep at night. Maybe it's through emotional eating. Maybe it's that sudden weight gain that feels completely impossible to reverse using the old traditional methods. That signal from your body, when your body finally says, okay, listen here, listen, B, enough is enough. And somehow it throws a flag on the play, if you will. And we as women oftentimes think I'm failing, that's a sign that I'm failing. I'm not able to handle it anymore. I'm not doing a good job anymore. Instead of asking a better question, which is, what has my body been trying to compensate for all these years? And I think one of the biggest mistakes that we as women make is viewing our body as separate from our lived experience. It's not. I tell women when I have conversations with them, they come to me about, potentially becoming a client in my 12-week program. I talk to them about their past, not just the past few months or weeks or even the fast past couple of years. I talk to them about their lived experience, their whole past, because the way I explain this is that everything we're going through now in perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause, it is the culmination of and a direct result in many ways of what I call the metabolic story, the metabolic narrative. And we have been writing that story for our entire lives. And so that lived experience and what our body has gone through is no, those are not separate things, right? They impact each other. And we we kind of keep it separate as though our body like exists independent from our stress and our grief and our fears and the pressure and the emotional upheaval that comes with life and the chaos of life and our identity and our burnout. We think that it's separate from relationship dynamics and stress and trauma and caretaking, but the body is participating in all of that all along the way. The body is also adapting to all of it. And adaptation is useful. Don't get me wrong, it is useful. It's one of the beautiful, I think, mysteries of how we survive this life. So adaptation is useful until it becomes costly. And that's why I think some women have this sort of aha moment where they suddenly realize, oh my God, my body wasn't randomly betraying me. It was compensating for all the years of this life that I've been living. And frankly, that realization should create some compassion in you instead of shame. Not not a helplessness or like a victimhood, but an awareness. Because I truly believe, and my clients will tell you, I talk about this all the time, awareness changes how you approach healing. You stop treating yourself like a discipline problem. You're not a bad kid that needs to be disciplined. You stop assuming that your body is betraying you or it's lazy or it's somehow malfunctioning. And you stop trying to punish yourself through restriction and overregulation and all of those things. And instead, you start asking questions, much smarter questions, quite frankly, like, what has my body been adapting to? What have I normalized? What am I ignoring? What are the signals that I'm getting that I'm not paying attention to? What what stress maybe have I minimized because I had to survive it? What patterns have become so familiar in my life that I don't even recognize them anymore? And maybe that's the real conversation that we need to have more often as women. Not a conversation about how I force my body to cooperate, to get in line, to get on track, but a conversation around what has my body been carrying this whole time? Because I think women like us are walking around believing that our bodies just suddenly turned against us in midlife, when in reality, our bodies, your body, may simply be revealing to you the cost of years that you have spent surviving. And that's not a criticism or a condemnation. You needed to survive, right? But for some of you listening to me today, I have a feeling that maybe I just explained something that you've kind of been feeling but didn't know how to put words to for a very long time. And if that's you, I'd love for you to share with me how this whole conversation resonated with you today. So, thanks for being here today. Thanks for allowing me to have this discussion in your ear. Thank you for being here every time you show up. And I hope you got something from this. So, I'll see you right back here next time.